Hello, friend. My name is Asindra, and today I'm going to be playing for you Autumn's Journey by Apple Cider. I remembered. Now, I don't know much except for these two are dragons, and that is exciting for me because I like dragons, so let's begin. Chapter 1 The End of Summer. Sunlight filtered through the airy birch forest as the lush ferns grazed my boots. I momentarily shielded my eyes before I turned north, treading carefully. The muggy atmosphere that had hung over the past few months was now being replaced by the subtle crispness of fall. Though the trees were still vibrantly green, apple picking season was fast approaching for the town of Barry. I cheerfully stretched one arm toward the sky, inhaling deeply. And thus my weekly scouting for monsters, bandits, or anything out of the ordinary that may harm local citizens is over. And that concludes my mission. I laughed, wondering why I announced my agenda to no one. I guess I always just wanted to say that out loud. Walking around alone does prompt you into monologuing just so you can hear a voice. I just want you to note that her name is Orly, or our name is Orly, because we are going to be playing her, I suppose. I just wish I wasn't restricted to freelance work in Barry, though. How long is my training going to last? I'm more than ready for knighthood. I can do this. I adjusted my sword belt, making sure the hilt could be pulled out at a moment's notice. Humming, I decided to meander back to the village by following the thin river down the gentle slope. I loved the terrain here. There was always an inclination, and higher up I could get a breathtaking panorama of Barry and its endless orchards. Especially in autumn, when the leaves were so vibrantly red that the entire forest seemed to ignite, and the smell of frost and fallen foliage lingered welcomingly. It was then that I spotted something entirely out of the ordinary near the riverbank, leaning against a tree. Birch trees were not exactly comfortable resting spots, and I did not recognize the stranger's attire. Hello? Are you a traveler? Boop. I like this picture. It's a good picture. I think the art is very good. I'm very pleased to see it all. But, let's see what we've got here. He's got a ribbon tied around his wrist. He's got an interesting tunic kind of thing, and the ear thing, and the arm thing, and let's read the actual dialogue. Okay. His face came into view, and I realized he was sleeping, but that's not what caught me off guard. He had beautiful protrusions resembling shale shards jutting out of his long hair, right where someone's ears ought to be. Or was it a decoration covering his ears? It could be. That'd be interesting, like having, ear cuffs. I don't know. I suddenly wanted to touch them, but I resisted. If he woke up in an untimely manner, it would be awkward to explain. At first I was about to leave, but then I noticed something else rather odd. I saw no bags, no possessions, or anything else on him. This place was too far away from civilization for a simple afternoon stroll. Was he mugged? And if he had been in Barry previously, I would have known. It was that small of a town. Curiosity won me over. Hello? I grabbed his shoulder and gave it a gentle shake, finding his lack of response unnerving. I hovered a hand in front of his nose. Sure enough, he was breathing, and I did not see any injuries that suggested he was knocked unconscious. After more feeble attempts to wake him, I decided to improvise a camp. I did not want to leave him unattended, and I knew I couldn't drag his body very far. Tossing down my bag, I went to work. The fire crackled merrily as I opened my cloth, which contained a lump of rye bread and hard cheese. These were emergency rations, lest I was unable to return to Barry. Mother and father were probably worried. Just as I was about to bite into the cheese, I saw movement and glanced up, eyeing the stranger. Setting my food down, I cautiously shuffled over. I had previously placed his body in the supine position and used my bag as a substitute pillow, though it was probably more lumpy than anything else. It was better than nothing. Are you awake now? You've been out all afternoon. I was getting worried. In a split second, he shot up and then clumsily fell back. I caught his arm to steady him. Whoa, take it easy. You just got up. He flinched from my contact, and I hastily let go, retreating slightly. I didn't get any sense of hostility, but he certainly seemed bewildered. Who are you? There was an uneasy edge in his voice, not quite one of panic, but more of anger. It was then that I noticed his eyes were a brilliant amethyst hue, contrasting with his earthy hair tones. Aurelie, I found you in the woods outside of Barry. The surprise did not leave his eyes. He stared at his hands and then covered his face. Lastly, he ran his fingers through his brown hair. His horrified reaction was so unsettling that I dumbly sat there for several seconds before mustering the courage to address him again. Are you all right? Obviously not, but I wanted a better grasp of the situation. He attempted to sit up again, but this time I was prepared. Again, he was repelled by my touch, and I gave up trying to help him that way. He still appeared unstable, but he stopped moving at least. He actually did it. The hell. He clutched at his temples, his fingers grazing over the odd shards in the place of his ears. He wobbled as he tried to stand, and I impatiently rushed to his side. Stop it! You obviously can't move in your condition, so you might as well sit down and clear your head. What's going on? Who are you, and what are you doing here? He looked at me as if he was registering me for the first time since asking who I was. Everything about him screamed overwhelmed, and he simply grit his teeth in frustration. I'm gonna ask if he's hungry. I decided to find another angle to help him open up. I did not consider myself intimidating, but it was possible he had no desire to answer anything. Are you hungry? I softened my voice and returned to my spot by the fire. I grabbed the cloth and genially offered him the rye bread and cheese. He only arched an eyebrow in disgust. What is that? That is food. You chew it. I ripped off a piece of the dark bread and demonstrated, humming delightedly to show that it was edible. He scoffed and averted his eyes. I don't want it. It looks revolting. Sorry, my peasant food does not please my lord's tastes. His attitude was rubbing off on me. Calm down. If anything, he's hiding that he's scared. He did just wake up in a foreign place. Are you nobility? He fell silent, and only the occasional crackle of the fire and the hooting of owls interrupted the stillness. I leaned back and ruminated over my meal, careful to leave some food untouched in case he changed his mind. There was that apple tart, too. I'll save it for later. I wrapped up the cloth, only vaguely aware that the stranger was examining my every movement. It nettled me slightly, but I didn't comment. I did not want to do anything that would raise his guard even more. It was now dark, and I occasionally fed the fire, getting the feeling I was going to spend the night there. After what seemed like an eternity, he finally spoke up. Who are you again? Aurelie. I'm from the town of Barry. And you? Kerr. He reluctantly uttered the name, gazing into the fire. He seemed much calmer now. And how did you get here? His lip curled, smirking knowingly. You probably wouldn't believe it if I told you. You have unusual eyes and a strange fashion accessory over your ears. I think I can find your story credible. He flexed his hand, scrutinizing his fingers. I didn't come here willingly. Out of all the places, I don't see why he decided to drop me in this low-born, simplistic... Kerr? He glared at me as if offended that I had addressed him directly. So, where are you from? I'm not particularly tied to any region. If it's not obvious already, I'm not one of you. I'm one of the dragons, an earth dragon. He stated with full of pride, with no ounce of humility. Dubiously, I inspected him from head to toe, taking note of the stone-like juts for ears and his remarkable eyes. He balked under my stare, but quickly regained his dignity. So why would an earth dragon be here? It's not because I wanted to. He blurted it out angrily, then touched his unique ears for comfort. I sighed, then tilted my head as I absorbed his explanation. Alright, I'll admit I'm not exactly accepting this as feasible, but I'm not dismissing it either. You can't transform back? If I could, do you think I would remain in this pathetic body? So weak. I instinctively patted my sword hilt to counter that remark, but stopped when I saw him attempt to stand again. It was like watching a toddler take his or her first steps, but instead of coaxing, I was fervently discouraging his efforts. We've already established that you're unfamiliar with your form. Besides, it's too dark to walk around aimlessly. I'll find a walking stick for you, and we can return to Barry if you'd like. It'd feel wrong if I abandoned you in this state. Are you saying I can't handle myself? I'm pointing it out. Realizing we were both escalating our voices, I looked away in a huff, not wanting to have our encounter turn sour so rapidly. An altar. I need to find an altar. You heavenkind worship us, right? Well, yeah. I mean, the dragonkind were here first, so it's only natural we pay our respects. I admit, I thought dragons were more divine and inapproachable. Kerr was definitely giving me a different impression. I barely knew anything about the dragonkind, though. They focused on their own affairs. You will take me there. It was a plain statement, not a suggestion or a plea. Why an altar? They're all heavenkind made. How would it help you? He parried my question exasperatedly. It doesn't matter. Do you know where one is? Yes, there's not one far from here. There's a cave that leads to it. Good. We should go there this instant. He obstinately tried to stand up again, but I lunged forward and firmly sat him back down. He glared at me in disbelief, but my will was as stubborn as his. Morning. We will do this in the morning. Get some sleep, and I'll find an ideal walking stick. I don't think you'll master bipedalism without some assistance, especially not in a day, and it'll be difficult if I have to physically support you the whole way there. So, just take it easy tonight. I'll even keep watch while you sleep. He fell silent and gave a reluctant nod, closing his eyes wearily. I sighed gratefully, feeling moderately triumphant over the battle of pig-headedness. While Kerr grumbled, I leaned over and pulled out a small blanket out of my bag. The temperature was still pleasant, even at night, but it could cool rapidly, especially since it was the end of summer. After returning some items to my bag, I reshaped it so it was a passable pillow again and offered it to Kerr, who seemed puzzled by its purpose. Believe me, you'll need something comfortable or you'll have trouble sleeping. Worse, you'll wake up with a sore back and getting to the altar will be even more troublesome. Oops, I clicked badly. Okay. You already slept on it once. I think you can figure out how to support your head with it again. I laughed sheepishly at my own stab at lightening the mood, but I could tell it wasn't working for Kerr. Disgruntled, he lay down on his side and experimented with a few positions before resting his head in satisfaction. At first, he refused to use the blanket, but as the temperature dropped, he discreetly pulled it toward him when he thought I wouldn't notice. Probably to hide his expression, he rolled over so his back was to me and the campfire. I had the feeling the initial shock took a lot out of him, and I admittedly hadn't helped when he'd ruffled my feathers more than once. Now that he slept, any irritation I felt dispersed along with the summer heat. I would need to be mentally and physically prepared for tomorrow, stay cool and collected as autumn. I poked the fire and stayed on my watch until exhaustion beguiled me into resting my eyes for just a few minutes. Aw. Hey. Oh, please, I've had less sleep than you, and I'm already energized and ready to go. Pouting, I poked Kerr some more with the walking stick I had fashioned for him. It wasn't easy finding a sturdy stick in a birch forest, but I had located a long one that would suffice. I had spent the morning carving off any bark and even indented the top to make it easier to grip. Now it was my dragon prod. Up! Arise, sacred dragon! Cut that out. Kerr hastily shot up, throwing off my blanket in a feeble attempt to hide the fact that he had used it. I decided to counter his usual scowl with the perkiest, most cheerful grin I could muster. "Good morning!" My greeting was genuine. For some reason, it satisfied me to know that my high spirits irked him. I could use my sunny disposition to my advantage. It'd be better than snapping at him at any rate. "Stop poking me with that." "It's your walking stick. Here, you're welcome." I turned it sideways and offered it to him. He warily gazed at it as if it was presenting a cobra instead, but carefully grasped it. Cautiously, he pressed the stick against the ground as he stood up. I remained close, lest he topple over again like yesterday. He quizzically drummed against the carved his fingers drummed against the carved handle, and he looked at me quizzically. That was a weird sentence mix-up. Anyway, you spent time on this? Well, I wanted to finish it off with a pretty flowing ribbon, but I had a feeling you wouldn't like that. Grumbling, Kerr took a step forward, leaning on the stick, before hesitantly taking another. With each step, he regained some confidence, and soon he was walking in a straight line, albeit with an uneven gait. He could not exactly break into a run, or even a brisk stride, but it was a huge improvement from last night. I estimated we could reach the cave leading to the altar by mid-afternoon. I quickly packed and followed him, since I had the feeling the only thing on his mind was that altar. "It's this way." I pointed toward the gentle incline, and Kerr narrowed his eyes resentfully. Going downhill would probably be difficult for him. As we headed towards our destination, I kept my distance at first, but I gradually drew toward Kerr, one hand extended in case of a stumble. Kerr balked and increased the distance between us, determined to progress on his own. However, his pace was excruciatingly slow, and he was unwilling to start any small talk. As the slope steepened, his footing became more unsteady, and I worryingly grabbed his arm for support. "What?" He twirled around in surprise, and I actually did end up bracing him. Once he was stable again, I sighed. "Look, I know you don't like me touching you, but if your priority is to get to that altar as soon as possible, I think you can swallow your dignity and accept my help. Besides, no one else is around to see your stumbling. You've done enough. I don't need any more help from you." He shifted his weight and used the stick to ward me away. I frowned disapprovingly. "Hey, if you hit me with that thing, I'll confiscate it." Even I would not do something like that. Gritting his teeth, he leaned heavily against one of the birch trees. "When I get back, I'm going to give him a piece of my mind." "Who?" "My master." His curt answer stalled the rush of questions piling up in my head. It'd be poor of me to interrogate him while he was still obviously overwhelmed by the situation. Right now, the goal was more important. "Then let's get you to that cave." "You believe me? Everything I told you?" "Maybe you're just a very convincing actor, but I think even an actor would drop this charade after a while." Just as I was about to reach for him again, a low grumble pierced the forest. I glanced at Kerr in amused bafflement. He averted his eyes, but I could tell he was embarrassed. "You know, if you're hungry." "I'm not." "I think you'll be able to walk faster if you have something to eat. What do dragons eat anyway?" "Meddling heaven kind." I rolled my eyes. "Well, you have a heaven-kind stomach now, and I doubt it'll agree with a diet like that. But it does make sense that you wouldn't want to try the bread or cheese. I doubt dragons thresh rye or run dairy farms." It was then that I remembered the apple tart. Even if Kerr found the pastry part detestable, the fruit would probably be familiar to him. I urged him to sit down. When he refused, I simply made myself comfortable on the ground first. "Here, this is the closest thing I have to something found in nature. I could forage, but that would take even longer." "What is that?" "It's a pastry. My dad owns a bakery. You probably wouldn't understand that. It's basically a treat with apple filling, and I think some apricot jam." Thankfully, my dad preferred showing off the natural ingredients. As a result, the top of the tart had slices of appetizing fruit covered with a lustrous yellow glaze. Kerr sniffed it warily. It must have been agreeable enough since he accepted the pastry. You're welcome. As soon as he nibbled on it, he realized how famished he was and quickly devoured the entire tart. I watched as he coughed slightly and wiped the crumbs off of his mouth, but his expression was unreadable. So, how was it? Anything tastes fine when you're starving. Or you just inhaled it so fast you didn't actually taste it. Well, it should tide you over until we reach the altar. Kerr grabbed his stick, and we resumed our trip. The extra sugar boost seemed to lift both the pace and his mood, although he stayed taciturn. As we continued through the forest, I stopped and groaned when I spotted some dark trees. Those are Efelbin trees. Completely forgot. We should probably go around them. Efelbin? He peered at the thick, gnarled trunks. What, scared of the bark? It'll be quicker if we continue in a straight line. No, it's not about the trees. It's what lies in them. They make perfect nests for aviterals. The hell are those? Those giant bird things. I thought you would know them. I would if I understood your names. Why are you giving new names to everything anyway? We dragons were here first, and we've already established. I raised my hands to silence him, not wanting to make any unnecessary noise. He scowled, but a shrill cry startled both of us. Then what do you call that? Usually food. Well, that'll be us now. Perched on one of the lower branches was a reptilian bird with scales running down its front. The rest of its body was covered in earth-toned feathers. Though probably no taller than 4 feet, its extremely wide wingspan and sharp talons made it a fearsome animal to encounter in the wild. Aviterals raised young way into the fall, so the mother would be extra territorial this time of year. The bird ruffled its plume, making itself seem larger than it was, and prepared to launch itself at us. I immediately stepped in front of Kerr, gripping my sword as I took a defensive stance. With Kerr's condition, an instant retreat wouldn't work. I'd have to guard him. What are you... You're not planning to fight it, are you? Do we have a choice? Look out! I shoved Kerr off balance. Thanks to my quick reflexes, we narrowly avoided a slash from the Aviteral's talons. The wind whipped at my hair as debris flew up around us. I scrambled to my feet and sprinted forward, hoping to keep the Aviteral's attention away from Kerr. As it dove towards me, I slashed upward. It veered away, dodging my counterattack. Kerr, I'll keep it busy while you get away. Are you stupid? I'm not leaving you behind. Kerr? I need you to take me to that altar. Maybe if you shouted directions at me, I could get there alone. I'm kind of busy here. I can't get my bearings in the middle of a battle. You're also talking in the middle of a battle. You know, good luck with that. Hang on, I need to take some water. Okay. My aggravation was the incentive I needed to keep the Aviteral at bay. However, my training had never covered aerial attacks, and the bird's scaly front was like armor. Are you holding back? Well, it's just protecting its young. It's trying to kill you. You think I haven't noticed? Oh, for the wings. Clip them. It won't hurt it, but it'll stop it from flying. Just clip the tips. I widened my stance as I prepared for another attack. At the last second, I leapt to the side, slicing at an angle. My sword beautifully sheared the Aviteral's thick primary feathers. The monster swerved into the ground, its shoulder and head bearing the brunt of its crash. It let out a cry, and I felt a split second of guilt that vanished with a yelp as the bird tried to tear me down with its talons. Luckily, the Aviteral was designed for swooping down at prey rather than running on the ground, so it could only hobble awkwardly. As it screeched and futilely spread its wings, I retreated, grateful that it was even slower than Kerr. I wove through the trees until it finally gave up chasing me. Sighing in relief, I looped back and returned to Kerr, who was also at a safe distance. Looks like it gave up, but what about its young? It'll be fine. The feathers will grow back, and it can still hop back to its nest. Its babies won't need to eat as constantly at this stage anyway. You sure know a lot about them. Thanks for the suggestion. He snorted indignantly. I already told you they're food. Of course I'd know about them. Soon the forest was quiet once again, with only the sounds of our footsteps and the tap of Kerr's walking stick breaking the silence. Surprisingly, he did not protest when I suggested a safer route, nor when I walked nearly shoulder to shoulder with him. I had the feeling that starting a conversation would push my luck, so I kept my mouth shut and instead hoped for no more setbacks. This is it? Yeah, it's not a very deep cave. You simply take a turn and the altar's right there. That's it? No complex mazes? No shiny sacred magical lake with a guardian or anything? Hey, we did what we could. This is a modest altar. I took a deep breath and smiled reminiscently. I haven't been in here for years. I think it came before to make the occasional offering around harvest season. I gave Kerr a cheerful look, but he continued forward, ignoring my recollections. I shrugged and followed, catching up to him. Kerr awkwardly knelt down before the altar, discarding the walking stick once he was comfortable. His eyes closed with a softened scowl, almost as if he was meditating. Suddenly, his mineral-like ears perked, and he stared directly at the statue. There was no change in the atmosphere, but I could tell Kerr was angry. His hands tightly gripped his knee. I know we're connected. I demand that you remove this stupid curse. He fell silent. I looked around in bemusement. He was talking to someone? But I could not hear the other half of the conversation. For some reason, that made me even more attentive as I tried to piece everything together. You can't be serious. So I said a few things, but... Huh? Yes, I've met one. That's how I found the altar in the first place. He whirled towards me and blinked in confusion, as if studying me for the first time. I stiffened, wondered why he was staring at me so intensely. Once he finally turned away, I relaxed, although I could not help but feel anxious about the discussion. What about me? Weak, pathetic, gives strange names to animals, doesn't seem to know much about Ishtara, or how the world works. Is he referring to heavenkind in general or just me? What? I guess their food is half decent or something. What? No. No. You're not sending me on a pointless inspirational quest. I'm not a child. I can't even walk in this form, so your plan is... At that moment, a blinding light flashed from where Kerr was standing, and I flinched in shock. Whoa, Kerr? By the time I had knelt down and worryingly grabbed his shoulder, the flash had already disappeared. In one smooth movement, Kerr removed my hand and stood up without the walking stick. His eyes still seemed focused beyond me, and he slowly nodded to himself. Did your powers return or something? He extended his palm and lurched towards the ground, slamming it against the hard stone. Yikes. The entire cave shook. The tremor visibly and mentally shook me as well, and my heart pounded loudly. I felt so paralyzed that I couldn't even scream. Once I found my balance, I looked bewilderedly at Kerr, who flexed his unharmed fingers with a smug expression. So, he barely glanced in my direction. It's not exactly what I wanted. However, a portion of my original powers and strength are back, along with my balance. I can actually be comfortable in this form now. He gave a dismissive kick to the walking stick, then promptly walked away from the altar. Where he's going, we will find out next time. So, thank you for watching. I hope you're enjoying this. I love you. Bye-bye.